policies actually made sure that 3 million people died due to a man-made famine in Bengal itself. So that's 3 million people dying within 2.5 years.
While there appears to be an abundance of food at the fish market in the new market of Kolkata, India, such was not always the case, particularly during the Second World War. Hi, I'm Matt, and welcome to this edition of Borders on Budgets. On this episode, we're going to take a walking tour of Newmarket to learn about war, famine, and riots during World War II.
Halt! Tundra vegetation. Surprisingly works out here.
Say, this torpedo tube is...
And the British Empire gets paranoid that Calcutta will be a city that will fall soon to the Japanese. So what they wanted to do, the British government wanted to do, is to remove all the food resources that they thought were extra from the market so that the Japanese cannot use them when they come and attack Calcutta. People in 1942-43 would be sitting on the street starving on this street in front of the silos, and 3 million people died that way by not getting fed, not getting the food that was there but was artificially put out of people's hands by the British government due to paranoia.
The British civil servant, whose title was Denial Commissioner, his name was Pinnell, and using Tathagata's flip chart, we can see that 123,000 tons of food were taken from the Bengal area and denied to the citizens, as well as 40,000 boats were destroyed so that the Japanese could never get their hands on it. And so what then, with the destruction of all of these boats, would that have done to the food supply?
And at that time there were no major roads, so all the transport system, financial systems were connected by rivers. So it did not only destroy those, but it also destroyed the fishing industry in Bengal. So that took the three major staples away from people: rice, pulses or dal, and fish. So people in the countryside started starving, and they started following these food trucks into Calcutta and other major cities where they hoped that the government will give them food. But that didn't happen.
So prior to this tour this morning, I had never heard of 3 million Indians dying because of a famine at the start of World War II. So Tathagata, how come this piece of history has almost been forgotten?
It was made to be a forgotten event, even when it was happening. So what the British government did is they banned the use of the word famine, shortage, or anything to do with death in starvation from all their reports and from all the newspapers. So these were all censored so that the world doesn't get to know about it, about what the British Empire was doing, until the point that Life magazine and Margaret Burke White publishes some photographs taken clandestinely in Calcutta and sent to the US clandestinely. And it's not just the world, we don't even read about this much in our history books. There's probably one line, one sentence about this in all of our Second World War history education.
I particularly like Tathagata's flip chart as a prop and a visual guide, and he explained that these maps have only been recently declassified by the American Army as of 10 years ago.
B-29s can fly bombing missions and bomb these places held by the Japanese and come back to Calcutta without the needing to refuel. So that means that Calcutta was needed, the air bases around it was needed by the American Army to bomb the hell out of the Japanese in these locations. Because Calcutta was the major railway station in the eastern India, and it was also the major fuel supply base because there's a huge port here. Calcutta's strategic importance increased that much. And actually my grandfather worked to set up this pipeline and the railway line here, and he won a Burma Star after the war because he participated in the war efforts, British war efforts. The Japanese wanted to keep the infrastructure of the city intact because they wanted to use the city as a base once they captured it to attack other places in India, especially Delhi. So that was the reason that the city itself was left almost unscathed, but the dockyards were completely obliterated.
As we've left Newmarket and we're heading to the Esplanade, a city center of Kolkata, it actually feels like the temperature has dropped about 5 degrees because of the shade of this building.
From here onwards, the bricks and all of that, those are old bricks. Those are bricks from 1940s, which are put up by the US Army. So during the Second World War, this store was like full of American GIs, as well as British, Canadian, Australia, New Zealand troops who would come here to shop. There was a tea room as well. But interesting part is if you're an African American GI, or if you are a British West African Regiment troop, which meant that if you are black, then you did not have access to these buildings, even if you had money to buy things. One of the big ones fell here in this area. So if you look around, you see that all the buildings here are new. By new, I mean post 1950s buildings. That's because the bomb fell here and obliterated the older buildings over here. There is a hotel, a very posh hotel called the Great Eastern, just on the next street, where a lot of British airmen were accommodated. So the bombing target was actually that, but the bomb missed that and fell on this on the area, on the neighborhood here, and that obliterated, blew off most of the older buildings that were here and killed about 60 people and a couple of cows as well. So that's what the official report states.
After the Second World War, the British had a difficult time maintaining their empire and the resources necessary to keep control of the territories, and it was India who became one of the first territories that gained its independence, but not without bloodshed.
Well, we'll soon find out if this is a crooked lane.
Calcutta was engulfed by a communal riot between the Hindus and the Muslims. And all the frustrations during the war that were pent up came out through the riots. So it's not as much as communal riots per se, but it's people frustrated with each other and all of that. The houses will be invaded, people will be brought out on the street and hacked in front of public eye or set on fire. So it was a very gloomy 10 to 15 day period where uncontrolled riots started taking place in the city.
During these 10 days of fighting in August 1946, what was the casualty rates?
But unofficial estimates are anything between 4,000 to 20,000. And about 100,000 people were made homeless because they had to flee from the city, from their families, to take shelter elsewhere where they thought they would be safe. So that's a huge casualty rate and human displacement rate for only 10 to 15 days of rioting that happened.
So India gained its independence on August 15th, 1947, exactly 1 year after the riots. So Tathagata, what was the legacy of the Second War and the riots for Kolkata and India?
In terms of inter-community relations, Hindu-Muslim relations, Bengal has been more stable that way because we have learned the lesson generationally from what happened in August 1946.
Well, it is with much appreciation, Tathagata. Thank you very much. Tathagata is the co-director of Heritage Walk Calcutta. This has been another edition of Borders on Budgets. A reminder, Borders on Budgets, long distance hikes, slices of life, and not a lot of money. From Kolkata, India, and the War, Famine and Riots tour, much appreciated, and we look forward to seeing you on the next episode.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Which one means avalanche? Commence slop drop. Well, nothing like cleaning out the sludge and fat burgers of the Kolkata sewer system. I look at this and I'm reminded of that scene from Slumdog Millionaire. Say, did you like this episode? Great. Help Borders on Budgets grow. Hit the subscribe button below. Give this video a thumbs up. Don't forget to share it with your friends. And your support is much appreciated.